The frying pan burst into flames. Daniel Carter slammed the lid down, choking the fire, his hands shaking from the jolt of adrenaline. Smoke curled through the cramped trailer kitchen, setting off the cheap ceiling alarm. It shrieked like it knew this morning was already falling apart. "Noah, open a window," Daniel barked. His 10-year-old son scrambled onto the counter and shoved the cracked frame up. Cold morning air rushed in. Liam stormed in from the hallway, barefoot and scowling. The toasters fried again, and Gracie spilled juice on Ella's chem notebook. Daniel exhaled through his teeth. Of course she did. This was life now, scrambling before sunrise, always $1 short, one step behind. One man, 4 kids, and the weight of 1,000 unpaid bills pressing against his spine. The trailer groaned with their chaos, Gracie humming off-key, Liam muttering about circuits, Ella sulking in the bathroom, Noah cracking eggs like grenades. Daniel wiped sweat from his brow with a dish towel and faced the mess head-on. Until the phone rang. It was an unfamiliar number. Florida area code, but not local. He almost let it go to voicemail. Almost. Daniel Carter, the voice on the other end, was smooth, professional, clipped like it belonged to expensive shoes and colder cities. Speaking. "This is Linda McAllister from Greystone and Blake, a legal firm based out of Miami. I'm calling regarding the estate of Elias Carter." Daniel froze. He hadn't heard that name, his father's name, in nearly 35 years. "There must be some mistake," he said. "I don't know anyone named, he was your biological father. He passed away last month." Daniel's hand tightened around the receiver. "That man left when I was 2. We never heard from him again." A pause. Papers shuffled. "Regardless of personal history, Mr. Carter, he named you as the sole inheritor of his estate." "What estate?" he said bitterly. "A pack of guilt and an empty chair. A vessel. Docked at Pelican Harbor Marina in Key West. A 1967 Bermuda clipper yacht named Esperanza." Daniel blinked. "He left me a boat." "Yes, and everything aboard it." The room blurred for a second. Linda continued. "The vessel is paid for through the next 6 months. Marina fees covered. All legal documents are in your inbox now, and courier copies will arrive tomorrow." Then, before he could ask anything else, the line clicked dead. He just stood there for a long moment. The kitchen fell silent. Even the kids noticed. Gracie peeked around the corner, holding her worn-out unicorn plush. "Daddy," she whispered. "What's wrong?" Daniel didn't have an answer. He didn't tell the kids everything right away. What could he say? "Your grandfather, the man who abandoned me, just left us a rotting boat down in Key West. Merry early Christmas." But that night, as he sat on the couch with Ella half asleep on one side and Liam hunched over a broken remote on the floor, something changed. Maybe it was the soft hum of the broken heater. Maybe it was the eviction notice sitting quietly on the counter. Maybe it was hope. Faint. Rusted. Like the yacht. 2 days later, they packed into the family's dying Ford Windstar, check engine light screaming, radio long dead, and drove south past Miami, past Homestead, into the tangled humidity of the Keys. The further they drove, the quieter everyone got. Even Gracie. Pelican Harbor wasn't what Daniel expected. He'd imagined something bright, polished, full of sailing rich folks sipping white wine. But this place was forgotten. Salt-eaten docks, faded paint. A few luxury yachts glittered like lyres among a graveyard of rust and algae. He pulled into the gravel lot, the kids piling out beside him. "I thought Grandpa was broke," Liam muttered, squinting at the boats. "Maybe he stole it," Ella said under her breath. Daniel wasn't sure what to say. The harbor office was a chipped trailer that smelled of cigarette smoke and wet rope. An old man behind the counter looked up from a crossword puzzle and gave Daniel a long stare. "You the Carter boy," he said slowly. Daniel nodded. The man whistled low. "Well, I'll be damned. Thought he made you up." "What, follow me?" No questions. No small talk. The man grabbed a key from a pegboard and led the Carter family through a maze of docks. The walk took almost 10 minutes. The deeper they went, the worse the boats looked: barnacles, broken masts, shattered windows. Finally, at the edge of the last pier, he stopped. There she is, the Esperanza. The name was barely legible through the moss on the hull. The yacht leaned slightly in its slip, the paint peeling like old skin. But beneath the grime there was shape, elegance, like an old lion dying but proud. Gracie tugged Daniel's sleeve. "It smells like ghosts." Noah whispered, "Cool." Ella crossed her arms. "So what now?" "We live on it." Daniel stared at the boat. No. Something about it felt loaded. Not just old or sad, but heavy, like it had secrets soaked into its bones. The dock creaked beneath their feet. The harbor master cleared his throat. He lived on her, you know. Last few years. Wouldn't let anyone aboard. Kept saying the boat's worth more than they know. Refused 6-figure offers. Daniel turned. "Wait, what kind of offers?" The man looked uneasy. "Different folks, some local, some from real far. All cash, all pushy. He told him to go to hell. Said if anything happened to him, the boat was yours, that you'd figure it out." Daniel narrowed his eyes. "Figure what out?" The harbor master just handed him the key and walked away. They climbed aboard. The wood groaned. The air was stale. Rot and salt mixed with something sharper. Daniel stepped through the narrow cabin door and into a room cluttered with charts, wires, radios, notebooks, and something else. A presence. This place had been lived in, obsessively. Every inch of wall covered in notes, newspaper clippings, maps with pins and lines. It looked like the inside of a conspiracy theorist's mind. Liam poked his head into a side room. "Dad, this doesn't feel like someone's home. It feels like a bunker." Daniel moved slowly toward the helm where a worn leather-bound notebook sat on the dash. His father's name was written inside. Elias Carter. "Hope lives in those who refuse to forget." Daniel ran a hand down his face. His pulse wouldn't settle. Ella stood beside him, voice soft. "What exactly did he leave us?" He looked around at the chaos, at the maps, the sealed compartments, the dust, the silence. "I don't know yet," Daniel said. But deep in his gut, he knew. Whatever it wasn't just a boat. The family begins exploring the Esperanza. Liam finds the structural inconsistency in the hull. Daniel realizes someone's watching them from the next dock. Secrets are stirring. And the boat feels alive. Daniel stepped carefully onto the yacht, its deck groaning under his weight. The smell of salt mildew and something faintly metallic filled his lungs. Each step forward felt like diving deeper into a mystery he hadn't asked for. His children followed hesitantly, their eyes scanning the rusted rails and clouded windows. Inside the Esperanza looked like the inside of a conspiracy bunker, chaotic but intentional. Maps covered in lines and pins, notebooks stacked like towers, and charts aged yellow by time cluttered every surface. Liam's eyes narrowed at the starboard wall. "Dad," he said slowly, "this cabin is way smaller than it should be. I think there's something hidden here." Daniel's heartbeat quickened. He reached out and tapped the wall, hollow. Ella wandered into the galley, picking up an old sextant. "This stuff belongs in a museum," she muttered, "not in some rotting boat." Gracie was clinging to Daniel's leg, her wide eyes darting from the cracked portholes to the dark hallway leading below deck. Noah had found an old compass and was pretending to steer the ship. Daniel crouched next to Liam, placing a palm against the uneven wood panel. "You sure?" Liam nodded. "I've watched enough YouTube boat restorations to know what a hull cross-section looks like. This wall cuts into space that should be accessible." Daniel stood up, rubbing his jaw. "We'll look into it," he said, trying to sound calm. But inside, his nerves rattled like loose screws. They moved through the yacht slowly. Every room was layered in dust and silence. The main cabin had a fold-out table with a ham radio in pieces, wires, exposed tubes burnt out. A coffee mug, half full and fossilized, sat beside it. In the stateroom, they found a faded photograph tucked beneath a set of rosary beads. A woman holding a baby. Daniel stared at it too long. He didn't recognize her, but something in the curve of her mouth, the way she cradled the child, sparked a familiar ache. "Who are you?" he whispered. Ella was looking through a stack of waterlogged journals. "Dad, these are in code or something. He wrote them himself." Daniel took one and flipped through it. His father's handwriting, tight, slanted, deliberate, filled every line. Coordinates, weather patterns, foreign names, newspaper clippings glued onto pages. He set the journal down and looked around. "This isn't just some pack rat's chaos," he muttered. "This was a war room." Gracie tugged on his sleeve. "Daddy, are we going to keep the boat?" Daniel knelt beside her. "I don't know yet, sweetheart." She nodded solemnly and held up a worn feather she'd found beneath a bunk. "This boat has secrets." Outside, the sun was beginning to set, throwing gold streaks across the water. From the upper deck, Liam called out, "Dad, we've got company." Daniel climbed up. A man on a nearby yacht was pretending to adjust a sail, but he wasn't watching his ropes. He was watching them. As soon as Daniel met his eyes, the man turned away too quickly. "We're being watched," Liam said quietly. Daniel took a slow breath. "I see it." He didn't say anything else, but the tension rippled through him like a live wire. The man could be harmless, or he could be one of the buyers the harbor master had warned about. Either way, they had overstayed for today. He gathered the kids, making sure the logbooks and maps were tucked back where they were. He locked the hatch tightly before stepping off the yacht. As they made their way down the dock, Gracie paused and whispered, "Someone's still looking at us." Daniel didn't turn around. Back at the car, he slammed the trunk closed and turned to Ella. "What do you think?" She shrugged. "It's a lot. More than just an old man's junk, that's for sure." Daniel looked back toward the water, toward the shadowed outline of the Esperanza, bobbing slightly in the dock. "If this boat's worthless," he said softly, "why did someone pay the slip fees 15 years in advance that night?" After the kids were asleep in their bunk beds at the motel, Daniel sat at the small table in the corner. His laptop hummed, screen glowing in the dark. He searched Elias Carter. Nothing. No obituary. No social security records for the past 20 years. He tried again, Esperanza Yacht, 1967 Bermuda Clipper, Panama. A few hits came up. One entry linked to an archived article about a missing fleet of government gold from Panama, 1968, following a military coup. He clicked deeper. The article listed 3 names. One of them, Captain Eduardo Villarreal, stood out. Not just because of the name, but because the article mentioned he was believed to have been executed for seditious theft and acts against the state. But a second link, half erased in an old conspiracy forum, claimed Eduardo was innocent, that he had tried to keep the gold from falling into the hands of corrupt politicians, and worse, foreign intelligence handlers. Daniel leaned back, heart thudding. What the hell was his father involved in? He opened his email and found a new message. From unknown sender at protonmail.com. Subject: You opened the wrong door. Message: Your father died protecting it. You should leave the rest buried. Daniel stared at the screen. He reached for the gold bar he'd stashed in his duffel bag just to feel its weight again. Real, cold, heavy with more than just metal. Gracie stirred in her sleep, mumbling. He covered the bar back up and shut the laptop. Tomorrow they'd go back. And this time he'd bring gloves, a crowbar, and a flashlight. There were too many questions now, and someone clearly didn't want him asking them. But the thing about questions. Once you ask the first, it's too late to stop. And something told him this boat, the Esperanza, wasn't just a ship. It was a lockbox, and someone was terrified of what he might find inside. Daniel sat at the edge of the motel bed, fingers tapping against the brass bar he'd tucked back into his duffel. The weight of it had changed, not physically, but in meaning. It wasn't just a piece of metal anymore. It was proof of something buried, something people had died for, something someone still wanted to keep hidden. He heard movement behind him. Ella was standing in the doorway, arms crossed. There's a guy in the lobby asking about us, she said. Daniel stood up fast. Too fast. His heart thudded once hard. He met Ella's eyes, then grabbed the gold bar and shoved it into the bottom of the backpack. Get the boys. We're leaving. Dad, who was that guy yesterday at the marina, she asked. Daniel didn't answer. Not because he didn't know, but because it was the same man now asking about them again. They left through the side stairwell, quiet, fast. Ella held Gracie's hand as they ducked behind the laundry trailer. The lobby windows reflected a tall man in a slate-gray suit, speaking to the clerk, voice low, back straight, expression patient like a vulture watching a slow bleed. Victor Green. He hadn't come alone. Another man, bigger, broader, wearing sunglasses despite the overcast sky, leaned against a black SUV parked just out of view. Daniel got the kids into the van, turned the key, and tried not to floor it. They drove in silence until they were back in Key West proper. He parked outside a convenience store and turned to Ella. Stay in the car. Lock the doors. I'll be 5 minutes. He stepped out and walked to the payphone next to the ice machine. He dialed the number from the bottom of Linda McAllister's legal letter, the law firm that had called about the boat. She picked up on the third ring. Greystone and Blake. This is Daniel Carter. I need to know who else you contacted about the inheritance. A pause. I'm sorry. You heard me. I want names. Did anyone else get a copy of the will? Did anyone else know the boat was mine, Mr. Carter? That information is confidential. He gripped the phone tighter. I'm being followed. A man showed up offering money. Now he's here at my motel. You call that confidential? The line went quiet. Then no one else was officially contacted. But rumors travel fast in the marine world. He hung up. When he got back to the car, Ella was watching him carefully. They're not just interested in the boat, are they? No, Daniel said. They're interested in what's inside. Back at the marina, the Esperanza sat quiet as if waiting. Daniel climbed aboard alone while the kids stayed near the car. He went straight to the galley and retrieved the crowbar from the storage locker beneath the bench seat. If Green wanted a reason to raise the price, Daniel would find it. He didn't get the chance. A voice called out behind him. "Mr. Carter." Daniel turned fast, half expecting the man from the motel. Instead, a different suit stood at the dock, hands folded, face calm. Middle-aged white hair and a perfect Windsor knot. "My name is Victor Green. May I come aboard?" The name wasn't a surprise, just the timing. Daniel said nothing. Green smiled, stepping onto the gangplank without waiting for permission. His shoes clicked softly against the weathered wood. "I represent a client," he said, "who's very interested in purchasing this yacht." Daniel folded his arms. What kind of client pays hotel clerks to ask questions for them? Green's smile didn't move. "In my line of work, discretion is currency." Daniel stayed silent. "My client is offering $150,000 in cash. Today. No questions. You walk away, we take care of marina fees, salvage paperwork, the whole thing." Daniel shook his head. "You don't even want to look inside." Green tilted his head. "I trust our sources. Besides, it's not about the boat's condition. It's about legacy, sentiment. Sometimes a name is worth more than the vessel it's carved on." Daniel stared at him. "So you're telling me someone wants to pay me 6 figures for a rusting boat full of mildew and mold? Because of the name on the back?" Green didn't blink. "Take the money, Mr. Carter. Boats like this are dangerous, and I don't mean the wiring." Daniel's skin prickled. "That sounds like a threat." "A warning," Green said smoothly, "from someone who appreciates history and knows how easily it gets erased." He held out a business card. It had no phone number, just a silver embossed monogram. Then he turned and left his footsteps as unhurried as ever. Daniel stood frozen on the deck. The wind lifted the corner of a tarp, revealing the sun-bleached cover of one of Elias's maps. He didn't need more proof. Whoever these people were, they didn't want the boat. They wanted the secret it carried. He climbed down and called the kids over. "We're going back inside. There's something I need to show you." Inside the main cabin, he explained everything. Not just the bar, not just the logbooks, but the man, the offer, the threat. Ella stayed quiet. Liam looked ready to fight. Noah tried to pretend he wasn't scared. Gracie climbed onto Daniel's lap and asked, "Is the boat magic?" Daniel almost laughed. "Not magic, sweetheart. Just full of things people shouldn't have." He waited, watching their faces. Then he said what none of them expected. "We're not selling it." Liam grinned. Ella rolled her eyes. But even she didn't argue. That night, Daniel drove across town to the marina workshop and found Hank Wallace tinkering with an engine. "I need a favor," Daniel said. Hank looked up, wiping grease from his fingers. "This about the boat. It's about what's inside it." Daniel pulled the gold bar from the backpack. Hank whistled low. "Well, hell. I need tools. I need eyes. I need someone who knows what to look for. And I need to know who else might be coming for me." Hank nodded once. "You just found your guy." As Daniel turned to leave, Hank called out, "One more thing." Daniel paused. "If you're gonna poke into whatever your old man was hiding, just know this: the kind of people who bury truth this deep don't dig with shovels. They dig with bodies." Daniel looked down at the bar in his hand, the weight of it anchoring him to the floor. Then he walked out into the night, knowing tomorrow they'd tear open the boat and whatever was hidden inside it. Even if it tore them apart. Daniel stood at the edge of the main cabin, crowbar in hand, sweat trickling down his temple, despite the morning chill. The kids were at Hank's workshop with Ella. Liam stayed back, insisting he could help. The boy stood quietly watching as Daniel wedged the crowbar into the seam they had marked the day before. "Ready?" Daniel asked. Liam nodded. Daniel pried hard. The wood creaked, splintered, and then finally cracked loose. The smell that hit them was old and sharp metal and oil and secrets. Behind the false panel, tightly packed in deteriorating canvas and plastic, were dozens of rectangular shapes. Daniel pulled one out, hands trembling. Heavy, sealed in waxed cloth. He peeled it open layer by layer until gold gleamed in the shaft of sunlight cutting through the porthole. Each bar stamped Banco Nacional de Panama, 1968. Liam stepped closer, breath caught. That's real, right?" Daniel didn't answer. He turned the bar over. Under the government seal was something stranger, a serial number followed by a triangle-shaped mark burned into the metal, barely visible. He picked up another bundle. Then another. Gold. Real, solid, history-soaked gold. A chill climbed his spine. This wasn't just about money. This was legacy. This was political. This was blood. Daniel sat on the edge of the bunk, the bar heavy across his lap. "That's not rust you're scraping off," he said softly to Liam. "That's blood turned old." Liam looked pale. "What do we do?" "We don't tell your siblings. Not yet. Not until I understand what this means." Outside, seagulls cried and the harbor clanged with its usual rhythm. But inside the Esperanza, time had stopped. Daniel carefully counted 24 bars before closing the false panel again. There were more he was sure of, it buried deeper into the belly of the boat. They covered the compartment and cleaned up quickly. He didn't want to leave signs. When they met Hank back at the workshop, Daniel pulled him aside and showed him one bar in a sealed cloth bag. Hank took it slow with the reverence of a man who knew what he was holding. He turned it over in silence. "You ever seen anything like this?" Daniel asked. "I've seen gold. I've even seen stolen gold. But not like this." Hank pointed to the triangular burn mark. "That symbol, it's not just for decoration." "What is it?" Hank shook his head. "It's military. Old Panamanian intelligence, maybe. Could mean it was tracked. Or tagged for internal recovery. So it's traceable." "Probably. If anyone with the right connections knows how to read it." Daniel leaned on the workbench. His stomach twisted. "My dad spent 50 years sitting on this living like a ghost." "Then he was smart," Hank said. "Because this isn't treasure. It's a loaded gun." Daniel slipped the gold back into the bag and tied it shut. Later that night, back at the motel, he laid the logbooks across the table, flipping through pages covered in tight, disciplined handwriting. Some entries were coordinates. Some were just one line, shipment secured. V remains watched. He stopped on one dated December 12, 1983. Still can't reach CM. Don't know if they made it out. Hid the last batch mid-hull. Sealed it tight. 25 confirmed, maybe more. If this ends, it ends with her. Her Daniel frowned. That was the first reference to someone besides V. Could it be a person, a code? He picked up his phone and opened a search tab. He typed Panama 1968, coupe gold theft missing. There it was again, the name Captain Eduardo Villarreal, executed for treason, accused of stealing $20 million in national reserves. 2 others executed with him. All denied guilt. Conspiracy theories still swirled: CIA operations, Cold War smuggling, disappeared funds. A thought crept into Daniel's mind, slow and heavy. What if Elias hadn't stolen the gold? What if he'd saved it? The idea felt insane, until he remembered the maps, the journals, the way the gold was buried behind walls not sold. He shut the laptop and looked at his kids sleeping. Ella on the pullout. Liam curled in the chair. Gracie wrapped in Noah's arms like a puzzle piece. He couldn't leave this alone. The next morning, a knock rattled the motel room. Daniel opened the door to find a manila envelope on the ground. No address. No name. He picked it up cautiously and closed the door. Inside was a single photograph, grainy black and white, of a boat almost identical to the Esperanza. Docked beside it, two men stood. One looked like Elias. The other, barely visible, wore a military uniform. The back of the photo had 3 words written in ink. Ask Carlos Mendoza. Daniel stared at the name. He didn't know who Carlos was, but someone clearly wanted him to find out. He turned the envelope over again and found a folded note tucked in the seam. Typed. You're not the first to open the wall, but you might be the last. That afternoon, Daniel called Tamara Blake. He found her email on an old article thread about Villarreal. He sent a single message: I think I have something that belonged to Eduardo Villarreal. If you're serious about the story, meet me in Key West. Bring your history books. Tamara replied in under 5 minutes. Already on my way. Daniel stared at the screen. He looked at the bar on the table. He thought of the man who'd followed them, the offer Green had made, and the fact that Elias had lived like a ghost just to protect this secret. Whatever happened next, he wasn't alone anymore. But if Tamara was coming, and Carlos Mendoza was still alive, that meant more people knew than he thought. And more people might want it all to stay buried. He closed the curtain as a car passed by too slowly outside. The wheels were in motion now. Next step, find out who Carlos Mendoza was and why someone left that name for him. Tamara Blake arrived at Pelican Harbor 2 days later in a dented black Jeep covered in road dust and coffee cups. Daniel spotted her from across the lot, leather jacket, messenger bag, notebook already in hand. She moved like someone who never stopped chasing stories, even when they chased back. Mr. Carter, she asked, offering her hand. Call me Daniel. She didn't waste time. By the time they sat down at the Marina Cafe, Tamara had pulled up 2 articles from the 1980s, 3 declassified CIA documents, and a pixelated image of Captain Eduardo Villarreal. Your father didn't just hide the gold, she said, eyes sharp. He preserved it. And based on these serial numbers you gave me, this isn't missing treasure. It's evidence. Daniel leaned in, voice low. Evidence of what? Of a cover-up that spans decades, multiple governments, and at least one agency that doesn't like its laundry aired out. She flipped open a spiral notebook. Your father's journals line up with movements of a CIA-backed op in 1968. Villarreal, your great-uncle, tried to intercept a shipment of Panamanian gold intended to fund covert operations across Central America. When he blew the whistle, they turned him into a scapegoat. Executed for treason, Daniel muttered. Except he never made it to trial. He disappeared, publicly declared dead. But his body was never confirmed. Daniel shook his head. So you're saying he might still be alive? Tamara shrugged. Maybe. But more likely your dad was the last man standing, who knew the whole truth. She tapped the photo of a man standing beside Elias on the Esperanza, the back of the photo Daniel had found in the anonymous envelope. That man, she said. That's not just another sailor. That's Carlos Mendoza, quartermaster, and the last person to see Eduardo alive. Daniel stared at the image. I was told to find him. Tamara looked up. Then we should start now. They spent the rest of the day making calls, checking Marina Records veterans forums and old shipping registries. It wasn't until sunset that Tamara pulled up an archived interview from 10 years earlier, a local Cuban newspaper piece on a retired sailor living off-grid in Tavernier Key. Name Carlos Mendoza. It took them an hour to get there. The drive was quiet, interrupted only by the sound of Gracie's soft humming in the back seat, and Tamara flipping through her notes. Ella had insisted on coming. Liam was still back at Hank's guarding the boat, like it was holy ground. Daniel knocked on the cabin door just after 9 p.m. No answer. He knocked again. Lights flicked on. The door opened a crack. An old man peered through the eyes sharp beneath a tangle of white hair and sun-worn skin. Carlos Mendoza, Daniel asked. Silence. My name's Daniel Carter. My father was Elias Carter. Carlos froze. The door opened wider. You'd better come in. The cabin was tight and smelled like cigar smoke and sea salt. Maps covered one wall. A small shrine stood in the corner, a photo of a man in uniform beside a candle burned halfway down. Carlos poured 2 cups of coffee and sat across from Daniel. I sailed with your father for 20 years, he said. We weren't smugglers. We weren't thieves. We were caretakers of something that should have never existed. Daniel placed one of the gold bars on the table. Carlos didn't blink. Banana gold, he said almost reverently. That's what we called it. Disappeared during the coup. Rumor said it funded the death squads in El Salvador. Reality, Elias and I took it before they could. Why, Daniel asked. Because Eduardo believed the gold could bring accountability one day if the right people told the story. Why didn't you go public? Carlos laughed bitter. With what, the U.S. press, Panama's military? We'd be dead before the ink dried. Tamara leaned forward. Why hide it all these years? Carlos looked at her. Because we had to wait for someone who wouldn't be bought. Someone who could finish what Eduardo started. He looked at Daniel then. That's you. Daniel sat back, stunned. I'm not a revolutionary. I'm a father. I fix engines. I've got 4 kids and no backup plan. Carlos nodded. That's exactly why it has to be you. You know what it's like to lose everything and still stand. Eduardo would have trusted that. He pushed an envelope across the table. Your father left this with me in case anything happened to him. Daniel opened it. Inside were offshore account numbers, contacts in Panama, and a hand-drawn map pointing to other possible hiding spots, ports up the coast, secret compartments within the Esperanza herself. Your father believed the gold could one day restore truth, Carlos said. If not to the world, then at least to his son. Daniel felt the weight of it, not just the gold, but the choice. Tamara broke the silence. If we expose this, people will come for us. The same ones who buried Eduardo, who threatened your father, who are now watching the boat. Carlos looked at Daniel with tired, proud eyes. History doesn't disappear, it hides. And when it comes back angry. Daniel nodded slowly. He understood now. The yacht wasn't a gift. It was a legacy, a burden, a lit fuse. And the countdown had already started. As they left the cabin, Tamara asked, so what's the plan? Daniel's voice was quiet, resolute. We go back. We find the rest. Then we bring it all into the light. Back at the motel, Daniel tucked Gracie in beside her brothers and sat alone on the balcony. He held Elias's logbook and turned to a fresh page. He wrote, "Contact legal aid. Reach out to museum director. Secure transfer channels." No mistakes. Inside his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Text message. "You're not the first to find the truth, but you can still choose to bury it." Daniel stared at the screen for a long time. Then he powered the phone off, went inside and pulled the curtain shut. He wasn't running anymore. He was preparing for war. The morning fog clung to Pelican Harbor like a secret thick and slow to burn off. Daniel and Tamara stood at the edge of the dock looking at the Esperanza as if it had aged 10 years overnight. Daniel could feel it in his bones. Something had changed. They climbed aboard in silence, Daniel leading the way with a flashlight and a fresh crowbar. The boat felt colder, tighter. Tamara stopped at the galley entrance. "Did you leave this open?" she asked, pointing to a half-loose cabinet door. Daniel shook his head. He knelt down, fingers tracing along the baseboards. Then he saw fresh pry marks in the wood. Someone had been here. Recently. They weren't the only ones looking anymore. Tamara whispered, "This just stopped being your story. It's everyone's problem now." They moved through the cabin room by room. The maps Elias had left were disturbed, not missing, but shuffled like someone had searched them in a hurry and put them back without care. Daniel headed for the false wall in the starboard cabin. He pried it open again, this time more slowly. The gold was still there, but 3 bars were missing. He counted twice. 22. "We had 25, he said. Tamara's face tightened. "Green. Or someone watching green. Doesn't matter. We're compromised." Daniel reached for the new panel Elias had drawn in the map from Carlos's envelope. It was supposed to be hidden deeper behind a storage hatch below the waterline. He opened the floorboards and pried the rusted hatch underneath. It took effort, bolts snapped, hinges groaned, but eventually the metal gave. A gust of cold air rushed up from the dark. Tamara shone the flashlight down. There it was, a second compartment. Narrow but deep. Inside, wrapped in waxed cloth, were more bars. Dozens. And at the bottom, a metal container about the size of a shoebox, sealed and chained. Daniel reached for it, but Tamara stopped him. "Wait." She pointed to the side wall. A message had been carved into the hull with something sharp, in Spanish. Daniel traced the letters with his finger, sounding out the words. "El silencio es la única promesa que no se puede romper." Tamara translated, "Silence is the only promise that cannot be broken." Daniel's breath hitched. "That's a warning." "No," Tamara said. "That's a line from a military oath. Cold War era. It means whoever wrote this, they were part of it, or punished by it." Daniel pulled the container from the hole, set it on the bench, and pried it open with the crowbar. Inside were photographs, dozens sealed in plastic sleeves, black and white. Faces, documents, executions, labeled folders. Some names were redacted, others weren't. Tamara flipped through them with trembling fingers. "This isn't just gold. This is testimony." She stopped on one photo, a young man in uniform tied to a post, blindfolded. On the back was scrawled, "Eduardo Villarreal, 6 HRs before execution." Daniel looked away. Tamara whispered, "This is what they killed for." Daniel nodded. "And what they'll kill again to keep buried." He stood up and locked the galley door. They sat in silence for a long moment, the container between them humming with ghosts. Tamara broke the stillness. We need to make a plan. Carlos gave me account numbers, contacts, safe harbors. We could move it. Slowly. A few bars at a time. But it'll take months. Do you trust those contacts? I trusted my father, Daniel said. That has to be enough for now. Tamara looked up. Then we don't wait. We start tonight. Daniel agreed. He sent Ella a coded text. Keep the kids inside. Lock both doors. Don't open for anyone. I love you. He and Tamara loaded 6 bars and the container into a toolbox, wrapped tight in a tarp. They left through the side of the marina just as the fog began to lift. Back at Hank's, the lights were off. Daniel knocked once, then again. The door creaked open. Hank stood inside, gun in hand. He relaxed when he saw Daniel. Thought you weren't coming back tonight. We need your help, Daniel said. We found more. And we're not the only ones digging. Hank nodded once. Come in. They spent the next hour securing the toolbox inside a storage compartment in Hank's tow truck. Nothing flashy. Just another old box in another dusty garage. Tamara made calls to 3 contacts she trusted from her reporting years. Lawyers. Former diplomats. One academic who specialized in Panamanian Cold War history. Only one picked up. He asked for proof. Tamara sent him a photo of the Villarreal execution picture. Within minutes, he called back. His voice was shaking. I've waited 20 years to see this. Daniel took the phone. If we give you what we have, he said, can you make it matter? The man's voice was firm. If you can get it to me safely, I can make it scream. Daniel hung up and turned to Tamara. We start there. They left Hank's at 2:14 a.m. As they drove past the marina, Daniel saw the man, again the one from the other boat, the one who had looked away too quickly. He was standing by the Esperanza, not bothering to hide. Watching. Waiting. Tamara saw him too. He's not security. No, Daniel said. He's bait. She frowned. For what Daniel didn't answer. They kept driving. Back at the motel, Daniel tucked the photo of Eduardo under his pillow and sat beside Gracie until she drifted off. He stared at the ceiling, listening to the low hum of the air conditioner and the weight of history pressing against the thin motel walls. His phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Text message. You were warned. Now you've made it personal. Daniel didn't reply. He just turned off the phone and added another line to the notebook he'd started that morning. Phase 1 locate. Secure. Silence. Phase 2 expose. Phase 3 survive. Because now it wasn't just about finding gold or telling a buried story. Now it was about staying alive long enough to finish it. The motel door was splintered when Daniel returned. Ella stood in the hallway holding a baseball bat, eyes wild, breathing hard. The kids were huddled in the corner of the room behind the flipped mattress. Glass shimmered across the floor like fallen stars. They were here, she said. 2 of them. They didn't say a word. Just came in swinging. Daniel rushed past her, stepping over shards. Gracie cried out when she saw him running into his arms. He held her chest tight. We're not safe anymore, Ella whispered, voice shaking. We never were, Daniel said. But now they know we won't run. He checked the locks. Broken. The window near the fire escape had been kicked in. The drawer where they kept the burner phones was empty. Gone. Tamara came in behind him, her voice low. They didn't take money. They took information. Daniel nodded. They were looking for the second stash. Or the photos, she said. Either way, this was a message. Daniel turned to Ella. Are you all okay? We're shaken, not broken, she said. But I'm not letting them get near the kids again. I'm not either, Daniel said. We're leaving, tonight. He loaded the kids into Hank's truck while Tamara swept the room one last time. She found a silver coin lodged under the bed frame, an old Panamanian Balboa. Recently polished, clean, planted. She held it up. Calling card. Daniel stared at it. A warning. They drove through the night toward Marathon Key, where Hank had a cousin with a safe house. Isolated. No neighbors. No questions. As the road stretched ahead, Daniel's mind raced. They were being hunted. Carefully. Strategically. Like someone already knew every move they'd make. Tamara sat beside him watching the mirror. We have to assume we're tagged. Your phone. Your van. Maybe even the boat. Daniel clenched the wheel. Then we go analog. No tech. No signals. Agreed, she said. From here on out, we're ghosts. They reached the safe house just before sunrise. A small, stilted home hidden behind mangroves. No electricity. Rainwater tanks. Old generator if needed. Daniel let the kids sleep while he and Tamara checked the perimeter. Inside, Hank's cousin Manny waited with a pistol tucked under his shirt and a weathered smile. Elias told me once, Manny said that if anyone ever showed up with that name and that boat, I was to help. No questions. You knew him, Daniel asked. I owed him my life, Manny replied. He saved my brother from a black site in Cologne back in '72. Said he never forgot what injustice looked like. Daniel looked away. The weight of his father's past kept pressing into his chest like it was alive. They settled in. Tamara built a map on the wall using string and tacks tracing where the gold had come from, where it had been hidden, and who had connections to it now. The names formed a web: political families, shadow financiers, ex-military. All of them dangerous. All of them silent. What do we do now? Ella asked, curled up beside a kerosene lamp. Daniel didn't hesitate. We hit back. How? We leak one picture, one name. Then we watch who scrambles. Tamara pulled out her laptop, one that had never touched the Carter Motel Wi-Fi. She uploaded the photo of Eduardo Villarreal's execution, blurred the face of the soldier standing beside him, and posted it to an encrypted journalism forum. She used a burner account. No message, just the image. Within an hour, she had 3 messages. One was from a journalist in Madrid. I've seen this before. They buried the original. Who are you? The second was a dead link. The third was a number. No name. Just a time, 4:00 a.m. Daniel watched the screen. It's bait. Maybe Tamara said. Or maybe it's our first real ally. At 4:00 a.m., Tamara called the number using a prepaid satellite phone. A woman answered. You have no idea what you're touching, the voice said. Spanish accent. Calm but urgent. Then tell us, Tamara said. Pause. You need to get to Isla Taboga. There's someone there who can finish what Villarreal started. The line went dead. Tamara looked at Daniel. Panama. He stared at the floor. I have 4 kids. I can't drag them into this. Ella stepped in. Then don't. I'll stay. I'll protect them. But you need to go, you and Tamara. Daniel looked at her, pain flickering in his eyes. This isn't just about exposing the past anymore. It's about stopping what's still happening. I know, Ella said. That's why you have to do it. Daniel nodded. That night he tucked each child into their makeshift beds, kissed their foreheads, and whispered promises he wasn't sure he could keep. Then he packed a bag. One bar. One photo. One name, Isla Taboga. As he closed the door to the safe house, Tamara joined him outside. You sure about this? She asked. Daniel looked at the sky, the stars stretched like a warning. They broke into my family's life like it was theirs to own, he said. They tried to scare us quiet. But now, he met her eyes. Now I owe them the storm. The air in Panama hit like a wall, humid, dense, and laced with salt. Daniel stepped off the ferry to Isla Taboga with a worn duffel slung over one shoulder. Tamara was just behind him, scanning the docks with practiced caution. Isla Taboga looked like paradise on the surface, but every postcard sky had its shadow. They didn't speak much as they moved through the winding streets. They had a name, Mateo Rivera, and a location scribbled in Carlos Mendoza's handwriting, La Casa de los Pájaros. A café, or a front. Daniel wasn't sure which. If this Mateo guy is real, Tamara said he's not just hiding for nostalgia. He's hiding because people want him gone. The café sat tucked between a row of pastel buildings nearly swallowed by bougainvillea vines and rusted signage. The smell of brewed coffee plantains and fried corn mixed with the scent of diesel from fishing boats out in the bay. Inside, ceiling fans clacked overhead. Locals sat scattered around chipped tables, sipping from ceramic mugs and reading newspapers printed in Spanish. Daniel approached the counter. A tall man with long gray hair tied back in a ponytail stood behind it polishing a coffee pot. His eyes flicked up, studying them both before returning to his task. We're looking for Mateo, Danielle said, voice steady. The man didn't flinch. Lots of Mateos here. This one served under Captain Villarreal. That stopped him. He set the pot down and leaned in. Who sent you, Carlos Mendoza? Daniel replied. He said you'd understand. The man motioned to a back door. No names, he said. Follow me. They were led through a narrow hallway to a room that smelled of old wood and tobacco. A single light bulb swung above a table surrounded by mismatched chairs. Mateo gestured for them to sit, then closed the door. You're Elias Carter's son, he said without asking. Daniel nodded. I knew your father. He was brave, reckless, honest when it counted. Mateo pulled a folder from a hidden panel in the wall and placed it on the table. Inside were clippings, photographs, handwritten notes in Spanish. This, he said, is the rest of the story. Daniel leaned forward, scanning the top sheet. A manifest. Military shipments dated June 1968. Beside it, a list of offshore accounts matching some from Carlos's envelope. Tamara whispered, this links the gold directly to U.S. Black Ops in Nicaragua and Guatemala. Mateo nodded. Eduardo found out. He tried to stop it. They silenced him, but not before he got it to Elias. Daniel said. Mateo turned a page. There's more. Eduardo didn't just want the truth exposed. He wanted it used. For justice. For reparations. His plan was to return the gold to Panama's people through a trust anonymously. Daniel rubbed his forehead. Why didn't that happen? Because your father feared the blood it would cost. He kept it hidden, waiting for someone who could finish the mission. Tamara sat back. Why now? Mateo looked at Daniel. Because your family isn't just holding gold. You're holding a lit fuse, and the people who lit it 50 years ago, they're still alive. Daniel opened the folder again. A name jumped out, Alan Green, listed as a liaison dated 1969. He was part of this, Daniel asked. He was the middleman, Matteo said. The fixer. He funneled the gold, laundered it, used it to buy silence. And now he wants it back, Daniel said, to keep it buried. Matteo nodded. And he's not working alone. They stayed in the cafe's back room for hours, piecing together connections, scanning documents. Matteo agreed to let Tamara take scans, no originals. He said he still had enemies even on this island. As they prepared to leave, Matteo pulled Daniel aside. Your father came here once, he said. Years ago. He asked me the same question I see in your eyes now. What question? What if I fail? Matteo said. I told him the same thing I'll tell you now. Failure isn't silence. It's surrender. Daniel looked down at the folder in his hands. I'm not surrendering. Then don't wait, Matteo said. Green's already here. Daniel froze. What his people arrived this morning. Tourists on paper. Military in posture. One of them was asking about a journalist. A woman with red hair, Tamara. Daniel's chest tightened. We need to go, Mom. Matteo handed him a burner phone. Use this if things go bad. But don't come back here. I won't survive another visit. Daniel thanked him and slipped the phone into his pocket. They exited through the alley behind the cafe and took a side route down toward the marina. Tamara's voice was tight. They're accelerating. They know we're close, Daniel said. Too close. They reached the boat Daniel had hired under an alias. The captain, a wiry man with a cigarette, always stuck to his lip, nodded them aboard. They were just about to cast off when Tamara grabbed Daniel's arm. Wait, she said. There's something else. She pulled a crumpled note from her jacket, left for her at the hotel front desk. No return address. No signature. Just a typed message. You have the gold, but we have the story. Meet us or lose everything. Daniel stared at it. A trap, maybe. But it's a clue. Whoever sent this knows what we have. Daniel folded the paper slowly. Then it's time to find out who else wants the truth, he said. They pulled away from Isla Taboga as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the water. Behind them, the island shimmered like a dream or a warning. Daniel stood at the stern, hand on the rail, wind in his face. His voice was quiet but sure. If they wanted silence, they should have never touched my family. The narrow streets of Casco Viejo glistened under the amber glow of antique street lamps, cobblestones still damp from a sudden afternoon downpour. Daniel and Tamara moved like shadows between centuries-old buildings drawn toward the address left in the anonymous note. It led them to an abandoned bell tower tucked behind a shuttered wine shop. Tamara hesitated at the entrance. This is either the start of something, she whispered, or the end of us. Daniel pushed open the rusted gate. Inside, dust danced in the slant of moonlight. Footsteps echoed. A figure stepped out from the shadows, hands raised, older, scarred. You have Eduardo's eyes, he said, voice hoarse. I watched him die. I remember every second of it. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. Who are you? The man stepped forward. My name is Rafael. I was a lieutenant in the Guardia Nacional. Eduardo was my captain and my friend. Tamara glanced at Daniel, confused. Then why Rafael held up a trembling hand. Because I didn't pull the trigger. I was there. I was ordered to watch. They made sure it was someone Eduardo didn't know. Someone with no history, no name. It was theater. He died for show. But he wasn't supposed to die. Daniel stepped closer. What are you talking about? Raphael's voice dropped. It was a staged execution. He was taken away afterward, drugged, flown out of Panama, where Tamara asked. No one knows, Raphael said. But Green was there. I saw him with my own eyes. He was orchestrating everything, making sure the body was never found. Eduardo's death was a message, not a murder. Daniel's hands clenched into fists. So he might be alive, I don't know, Raphael said. But if he is, he's not living free. He stepped back and pulled a weathered envelope from his coat. I've carried this for 35 years. Eduardo gave it to me the night before he was taken. Told me to give it to someone who looked like him, spoke like him, but carried more anger in his chest. Daniel took the envelope. Inside was a key. Old. Iron. Engraved with a number 47B. Raphael looked at him. That key opens a safety deposit box in the Banco Nacional vault. But not the public one. There's a private floor. Restricted access. You'll need this too. He handed Tamara a plastic card with fading blue stripes and a thumbprint ID embedded in the corner. It belonged to a woman named Lucia Mendez, Raphael explained. She worked in intelligence. She disappeared in '74. She had access to the vault. Her ID still pings alive in their system. Tamara pocketed the card. And you kept this all this time, Raphael looked tired. Because I was a coward. Because I thought if I stayed silent, the ghosts would leave me alone. He looked at Daniel. But you're not a coward. You're Elias's son. Eduardo's blood. And Green. He fears what's in that vault. Do you? Daniel asked. Raphael didn't answer. Outside, a car passed slowly down the narrow street. Tamara tensed. Raphael moved toward the back exit. You have one chance, he said. Use that key before Green burns it all down. He disappeared into the night, leaving Daniel holding the key like it might shatter in his hands. They didn't speak until they were back at the safe house Daniel had arranged, through Mateo's contacts. Tamara paced the floor, hands in her hair. A fake execution. A private vault. A lost ID. This isn't just history anymore. This is a war still breathing. Daniel sat down heavily. We go to the bank. You realize we're walking into the lion's mouth, right? Tamara said. Green will have eyes everywhere. Then we walk fast, Daniel said, and we don't look back. He stared at the key, thinking about Eduardo, about his father, about the weight of stories unfinished. If Eduardo really is alive, he said, this vault could lead us to him. Tamara nodded. And if he's not, then it'll lead us to the truth, Daniel said. And either way, Green loses. They spent the next few hours planning the approach. Tamara used Lucia's ID to spoof an access request in the bank's internal system. Mateo provided a contact, a janitor on the night shift who owed him favors. They'd have 1 hour of clean time. 1 hour, Tamara repeated. Then the system flags the entry. Daniel held the key tight. Then let's make every minute count. The next night they entered the Banco Nacional through a rear delivery entrance dressed as maintenance staff. The security guard barely looked up as Tamara flashed the ID card. Daniel carried a mop bucket with the vault tools hidden beneath clean towels. They rode the private elevator down to floor B3. the restricted level. It smelled like old steel and waxed marble. The hallway was lined with vault doors, each one marked with faded gold numbers. 47B. Tamara whispered. End of the hall. Daniel inserted the key. It clicked. The door opened to reveal a small compartment no larger than a suitcase. Inside was a black case sealed with clasps and a layer of dust thick enough to prove it hadn't been touched in decades. Daniel opened it. Inside were reels of film, dozens, along with a leather-bound notebook, coordinates, names, evidence. Tamara pulled one reel out and held it to the light. This is intelligence footage, surveillance, and this notebook. She flipped it open. Eduardo's handwriting. Daniel exhaled. Tamara's eyes widened. This isn't just a record. This is a roadmap. Then let's take it, Daniel said. They sealed the case again and slid it into a cleaning cart, wheeling it out as casually as they'd come in. As they passed the security desk, the guard looked up. Tamara smiled. Slow night. Always is, he replied. They didn't breathe easy until they were 3 blocks away, tucked into a waiting taxi headed back to their safe house. Inside the cab, Daniel stared at the case. He whispered, if they went this far to hide it, it must be worth dying for. Tamara looked at him serious. Then we better make sure it's worth living for, too. Back in the safe house, the air was still thick with the weight of what they had pulled from the vault. Tamara carefully fed the first reel into the borrowed projector. The film jumped to life in fits and sputters, flickering images onto the bare wall. Eduardo Villarreal appeared younger than the photo, but with the same haunted eyes. He stood before a backdrop of crates, papers, and maps. He began to speak in Spanish slowly and clearly, as though every word was a piece of a long-buried puzzle. Daniel watched unmoving as his uncle's voice came through the speakers. If you're seeing this, Eduardo said, then it means my silence has ended. And yours must begin. Tamara hit pause. He's warning us, she said, not just telling a story. This is strategy. Daniel nodded, eyes never leaving the frozen frame on the wall. He's not just talking to us. He's preparing us. They restarted the film. Eduardo detailed names, dates, operations. A map appeared markings across Central America, points of transfer for Gold Arms intelligence. Some marked with red circles, some with black crosses. These are death sites, Tamara said. Disposal zones. Every red circle a shipment. Every cross a body. Daniel felt his stomach twist. This was never about the money. It was about power. In the second reel, Eduardo's tone shifted. His voice cracked. I betrayed people, he said. Friends. My own blood. Because I thought compromise could buy peace, but it only rented silence. He looked straight into the camera. To whoever holds this now, I ask you, don't make the same bargain I did. Tamara leaned forward. He knew it wouldn't stop with him. They watched for hours, 8 reels in total, testimonies, confessions, hidden camera footage, even recordings of Green younger but unmistakable in meetings with intelligence officers and shadowy bankers. Tamara turned to Daniel. This doesn't just take down Green. This burns down every system he built. Daniel's throat tightened. Then we have to release it. But not all at once, she said. It's too much. They'll call it fake. Drown it in noise. We need to piece it out. Build a trail people can follow. Daniel nodded, like Eduardo did. They stayed up through the night, cataloging the footage, translating what they could, uploading it to encrypted drives. Tamara contacted her journalist network. 3 confirmed they'd publish under protection. 1 said no. The 4th never replied. That morning, Tamara received a message on her dark line too late. They found the kids. Daniel's blood froze. What Tamara's fingers flew across the keys. An attachment opened grainy footage from a security camera. Ella and the kids being escorted out of the safe house by 2 men in suits. Daniel backed away from the screen, heart pounding. No. No, no. We need to move, Tamara said. Now. Daniel grabbed the case. We're not running. We're finishing this. We can't help them if we're dead, Tamara snapped. Daniel turned face cold. If they hurt my family, this ends in fire. She didn't argue. They left the safe house through a back alley and rendezvoused with Matteo at an abandoned church. He had already heard. They're being held at a black site, he said, hidden under a foundation near the canal. It's where they used to keep enemies of the regime. It's off the map. Government disavowed. Daniel tightened his grip on the case. Then we break the map. Matteo handed him a folded schematic. Your father gave me this in case the worst happened. It's a tunnel blueprint. It runs beneath the site. Sewage old escape lines. Tamara scanned it. We could get in unseen. Daniel looked at Matteo. Will you help us? Matteo didn't hesitate. I served Eduardo. I'll die for his blood. The 3 of them gathered Gearlight's masks. Tamara uploaded half the archive to scheduled cloud releases. If they didn't check in by morning, the entire package would drop. She turned to Daniel. Whatever happens down there, I know, he said. But I'm not letting them die for a secret. They reached the tunnel entrance by dusk. It was hidden behind a collapsed pier, accessible only at low tide. The air inside stank of rot and metal. They moved in silence, following the map's curves by flashlight. Tamara whispered. What if we're too late? Daniel's voice was low and hard. Then we make sure it never happens again. They reached a sealed grate just below the site. Tamara disabled the alarm with a repurposed laptop cable and a battery pack. It clicked open. Above them, silence. Daniel climbed first. Inside, the halls were dark concrete, unfinished, like the site had been abandoned mid-construction. But it wasn't empty. 2 guards. Matteo dropped one with a chokehold. Daniel tackled the other. They moved room to room, searching. Tamara found a cell door ajar. Inside, Ella, bruised but alive. Gracie asleep on her lap. Ella's eyes widened. How Daniel knelt beside her. No time. We're getting you out. Liam and Caleb were in the next room. Matteo freed them. Everyone was moving fast, adrenaline-fueled, scared but silent. Then a voice behind them. Slow, icy. You really thought it would end like this, Green? He stood at the hallway's edge, flanked by 2 men with rifles. Daniel stepped forward, hands raised. Let them go, I can't, Green said, calm. They're leverage. You don't have leverage, Tamara said. You're done. She held up her phone. Everything's in motion. You kill us, the world sees what you did, what you built, who you murdered. Green smiled faintly. I built nations. You think YouTube is going to stop me? Daniel stepped closer. No. But your legacy will choke on its own secrets. Gunfire erupted. Matteo pulled the kids down. Daniel tackled Green to the ground as Tamara smashed the projector case into one of the guards. It was chaos bodies crashing, shouts echoing. Daniel pinned Green. You broke my family, he hissed. Now I'm breaking your story. He knocked him out cold. They got everyone out through the tunnel as sirens began to wail above. Tamara dropped a flash drive into the sewer water behind them. Symbolic, maybe, but it felt like a cleansing. Once safe, Daniel looked at his children at Ella at the case. Tamara came to his side. She whispered, "He said silence ends here." And we made sure of it. Daniel nodded. But deep down he knew something bigger had begun. The footage hit the web at dawn. First a quiet ripple on encrypted journalist forums. Then mainstream platforms picked it up, blurry black and white reels, names, voiceovers translated in 6 languages. By noon, Alan Green's name trended globally. Government denials flooded the media. Then came resignations, arrest warrants, shadow diplomacy unraveling on live news feeds. Daniel watched from a safe house high in the hills outside Bogota. The kids were sleeping. Ella brewed instant coffee, silent. Tamara paced, phone in hand, her expression unreadable. "We lit a fire that won't go out," she said. "Now the world has to decide what burns." Daniel didn't speak. He was staring at the screen as Green's name flashed beneath footage of Eduardo Villarreal. Reporters quoted pieces of Eduardo's testimony. His phrase, "compromise rents silence." "Justice buys its own voice" became a hashtag within hours. Governments scrambled. Allies distanced themselves. The CIA issued a statement so vague, it almost sounded like a confession. Green disappeared. Tamara tossed her phone onto the couch. Interpol's issuing a red notice. Some senators are calling it a disinformation campaign, but the evidence is too detailed. It's unraveling, just like we hoped. Ella handed her a mug. And us, that was the question. They were safe for the moment, but only because no one knew exactly where they were. That wouldn't last. Daniel rubbed his temples. "I've got 5 burner phones. Every journalist in my inbox wants an exclusive. We could pick one, control the message." "We already did," Tamara said. "The story's out. Anything else is just noise control." "But we still have the originals," Ella reminded. "The vault reels. Eduardo's notebook." Tamara nodded. "They'll try to rewrite it. So we release the rest. Carefully. On our terms." Daniel looked at his children asleep in the next room, and then what Ella's voice was soft. "Then we live." Later that night, a black SUV arrived at the edge of the property. Tamara looked through the window and tensed. "We're not alone." Daniel opened the door with a crowbar in hand. The driver stepped out, palms raised. A woman followed, mid-40s, sharp suit, no weapon drawn. "I'm Marlene Briggs," she said. U.S. State Department. Off the record." Daniel didn't lower the crowbar. "We're not here to arrest you," she continued. "We're here to offer a deal." Tamara stepped beside Daniel. "Of course you are." Briggs handed over a sealed envelope. Inside were 2 passports, new identities, forged visas, and a bank card. "Offshore. You go dark," Briggs said. "Disappear. The footage stays up, but the rest, the notebooks, the remaining evidence, it dies with you. Quiet, peaceful." Daniel stared at the passports. "What if we say no, then we can't guarantee your family's safety," Briggs said. "There are people who want blood, Daniel, not just Green's. Yours too." He didn't respond. Briggs stepped closer. "I read the transcripts. I know you're not in this for vengeance. You wanted justice. You got it. But justice has limits. People need stability. We can give you that." She handed him a burner phone. "You've got 24 hours. They left. Inside, the silence was heavy. Tamara sat down. It's the offer we knew was coming. Ella crossed her arms. And what? We just vanish. Let them bury it all over again. Daniel was quiet for a long time. I didn't do all this just to run, he said. Tamara nodded. Then we burn the bridge. Release everything. No more filters. No more edits. Ella looked at the kids. And what about them? Daniel knelt beside her. They'll grow up knowing the truth, no matter where we are. They spent the night preparing the last wave. Eduardo's full notebook, the unreleased reels, internal communications from Green's decades in power, financial trails, offshore accounts. Tamara built a release schedule, 3 waves each, routed through separate global networks, each designed to crash backdoors and cut off legal suppressions. Once it started, no one could stop it. Daniel stared at the final upload button. Ella touched his shoulder. You don't owe them silence. He pressed send. At dawn, they left the safe house, not running, relocating. They crossed into Ecuador under forged identities, met by Mateo's contacts. The children never looked back. Ella carried the only physical notebook. Tamara carried 2 encrypted drives, one hidden in her boot, the other in her coat lining. They moved through cities like whispers. Quito, Medellin, a month in Belize. Then silence. But the world wasn't quiet. The second wave hit harder than the first. A sitting prime minister resigned mid-interview. 3 corporations collapsed overnight. Green's known properties were raided. A Swiss banker turned informant. Some called Daniel a hero. Others called him a traitor. But no one called him wrong. A month later, in a safe flat in the highlands of Peru, Daniel received an unmarked envelope. Inside was a single photo. Eduardo. Alive. A dated stamp on the corner, April, 2 months ago. He stared at the image. He's still out there, Daniel whispered. Tamara leaned over his shoulder. Then it's not over. Daniel smiled faintly. No, but it's ours now. He looked at his kids asleep, safe, whole. For the first time in generations, it's ours. The Esperanza swayed gently in the Carolina Marina, her hull freshly painted, her deck stripped clean of secrets. Daniel stood barefoot on the wood, salt wind in his lungs, the hum of his thoughts louder than the breeze. It had been a year since the vault, since the leaks, since the world cracked open and tried to decide if it wanted to heal or hide. He'd returned to where it all started, not to reclaim something, but to release it. Tamara sat at the edge of the dock, watching him. The kids played behind her, laughing for once, untouched by shadows. Ella sat with a book, eyes flicking up now and then, guarding in quiet. Daniel placed Eduardo's notebook in a sealed case, tucked it into a dry compartment beneath the cabin floor. Not to bury the truth, but to preserve it. He had thought a lot about legacy, not the kind written in gold or stamped in laws, but the kind passed between fathers and sons, between whispered stories and hard choices, the kind that leaves you wondering if silence is safer than truth, or if truth, no matter how ugly, is the only way to live free. He heard Gracie squeal as Liam splashed water on her and smiled despite himself. The sound was real, honest. It cut through all the noise. You sure about this? Tamara asked, standing behind him now. Daniel looked at her. About which part, any of it? He exhaled, eyes on the horizon. No. But I'm done letting fear make my choices. Tamara nodded slowly. Then I guess this is our new map. They hadn't returned to the spotlight. They didn't give interviews, The final wave of evidence was released just like they planned. It changed things. Not everything the world doesn't shift overnight, but enough. People went to prison. Others vanished. Some names became legends. Others cautionary tales. And Eduardo. No more photos came. No confirmed sightings. Only rumors. Jungle sightings, an old man teaching children to grow food and question power. Maybe he was alive. Maybe he was finally free. Daniel didn't need to know. Some answers mattered more when they stayed questions. He walked across the deck, running his fingers along the mast. The boat was different now. Lighter. Not just in weight, but in soul. Once the Esperanza had been a tomb of lies. Now she was just a boat. "I've been thinking," Ella said, climbing aboard. "Maybe we take her down the coast. Just us. Disappear for a bit. Let the world figure itself out without us." Daniel looked at her, then at the kids. "Think they're ready?" Ella smiled. "They were born in fire. I think a little ocean breeze might finally cool them down." He nodded. They untied the lines an hour later. The motor purred low. Tamara guided them out of the slip, while Caleb shouted nautical terms he barely understood. Daniel stood at the helm, watching the shore shrink behind them. No helicopters. No hidden eyes. Just sky. And water. And breath. Halfway into open sea, Liam climbed up beside him. "Dad, yeah. Was all of that real, like the gold and the bad guys and the vaults?" Daniel thought about how to answer. He looked down at his son, eyes bright, waiting for something solid. "It was real," Daniel said. "All of it. And a lot of it was terrible. But it also showed me what matters." "Like family," Daniel smiled. "Yeah. Like family. And the truth. Even when it's hard." Liam nodded slowly, chewing that over. "Will they come back?" he asked. "The bad people?" Daniel's gaze returned to the horizon. "Maybe. But we'll be ready. And this time the world's watching." He didn't say it to scare him. He said it because it was honest. Tamara came up with coffee. She handed him a cup, leaned against the railing. "You ever think about what would have happened if we walked away back then?" she asked. "All the time," Daniel said. "And I always come to the same answer." She raised an eyebrow. "I couldn't have lived with myself." They sailed south for weeks. They stopped in tiny harbors, never staying too long. No one recognized them. Not anymore. The world had moved on. Headlines gave way to other disasters. But the deeper movement, the quiet awakenings in countries once too scared to speak, those didn't stop. Journalists wrote. Activists organized. Whistleblowers came forward. Change crawled in small, stubborn steps. But it crawled. One night, anchored near a cove in the Keys, Daniel pulled out Eduardo's voice reel again. Just audio. He didn't play it often, but sometimes he needed to hear the man who had risked everything for a future he'd never see. "If history is written by the victors," Eduardo had said, "then make sure your victory is human." Daniel stared at the stars above. There it was, the message, the meaning. They hadn't just exposed corruption. They'd reclaimed the right to tell their story. Not for revenge, not for fame, but for the right to live in a world where the truth, even if bloodied, even if buried, still had a pulse. A world where silence didn't mean safety, and where fathers could look their children in the eye and say, "I chose the hard thing so you wouldn't have to." He sat back, wind brushing his face. The Esperanza rocked gently. Tomorrow they'd sail again. Not running, not hiding, just moving forward, together.